Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Back for another sunny day at Anglia Car Auctions for their end of August classic car auction. 2 days of auction as usual. The first day is normally what I'd call the more affordable, cheaper end of the scale cars, and the second day the more expensive cars that are generally kept inside. I thought I might be covering quite a few cars, so I'll probably split this video into two different ones. So today's video will be the more affordable end of the spectrum of the classic cars, and my next video will be the second day of the more expensive cars. 1979 Lancia Beta here, SYDER, and this one has apparently been in storage, recently out of storage, since 1996. So it's had quite a bit spent on it, recommissioning it, and it's got pretty much a full year's MOT on it, but I think it'll be a brave person who buys this, even though it's no reserve. You know, Lancia that's been stored for that long, just to me spells trouble. Quite a lot of rust poking through, clearly quite bad down here and where you'd expect to see it down on the sills. And obviously this is pretty tatty, poor condition. There's some rips on the seats as well. You can see paintwork damage, quite a lot of rust at the front here. So this is really a restoration project, I guess. Here's a lovely little Lotus Elan Plus 2. In 1972, it had a full respray and looks excellent actually, just a few years ago. 1600cc, it's had a full engine rebuild as well in 2020. And overall looks very good condition. And I thought, well, that looks like a cheap guide price of £10,000 to £12,000. But it does apparently need a full mechanical overhaul. Not entirely sure what that means. Given it had an engine rebuild 5 years ago, you'd think it would be fairly good, but clearly either not running or just been off the road for quite a while. Also needs some electrical work apparently, so clearly this is a project which explains the relatively cheap for one of these guide price. Yeah, beautiful design though, it's a really good looking car. Here's a lovely looking Jaguar XJ6. It's the 4.2 6-cylinder Series 1, and I don't see too many Series 1s at the moment. This one is apparently driven down from Scotland for the auction. You can see it's not perfect, certainly on that bumper. Apparently it's undergone a restoration in 1999 and then been stored until last year, which seems slightly odd why someone would do that, but there you go. There's a dent there. Looks reasonable in there. And it's had some recent money spent on it, £600 on suspension components. Yeah, smells like an old Jag. And looks pretty reasonable in there. There are some minor paintwork issues and bubbling. Doesn't look to be anything too bad though. And guided at £4,000 to £6,000. Yeah, I reckon that's not a bad car for that money. Some issues around here, some bubbling, corrosion on this arch, and now what I've just seen, a significant pile of what looks like almost definitely coolant, I think. Beware this one, probably not one to get after all, unless you are handy with the spanners. Beautiful car here, 1934 Armstrong SIDDELEY, a 1500cc engine, 12 horsepower. I don't know a lot about these, but this has had quite a lot spent on it. So 2017 it had a full bare metal respray, and then it's had about £6,000 spent on it, recommissioning it over the last few years. And that makes the guide price of £3,000 to £5,000 seem like pretty good value to me. Look at this old sunroof here. Awesome. Clearly quite a lot of age damage here. Lovely looking car though. So a couple of Cortinas here. This is a pretty rusty Mark V, which is no reserve. This is really not in very good condition. I won't be featuring that one actually. But I'm going to feature this 1969, it's a 1600 GT Estate. And I love the colour of this. Beautiful looking car. and it looks in reasonably good condition. Apparently restored in 1990, owned for the last 3 years or so, and the owner has apparently done quite a lot of work and upgrades to this, electric ignition, etc. And it's a good looking car. Really pretty good condition in here. There's some very minor bubbling in places. It's definitely not perfect paintwork. You know, there's bits of rust poking through, etc. But guided at £5,000 to £7,000, I actually reckon this looks like a fairly good buy. Here is a 2004 MG ZT Plus 190, so 2.5 litre V6, 190 horsepower. The Plus version, I can't remember exactly what else they had, but it was obviously a higher spec with some interior niceties, I think. This is only 54,000 miles and guided at what I think pretty cheaply, £3,000 to £4,000. Paintwork looks very good. There's some minor issues to it. I don't quite know what's happened here on the door rubber, deeply gouged, and down here some paint, car park dings. Wheels look excellent, and I've had a good look underneath this, and it looks really remarkably good. These do tend to rust away, so much so that I've pretty much given up looking at them. But this one looks excellent. Sills, jacking points, all very good, and it looks like it's probably been undersealed as well. I reckon this is an excellent buy at £3,000 to £4,000. Rare to find one such low mileage and in such good condition. Ford Zodiac here, guided pretty cheaply at £4,000 to £6,000, so as expected, it's not in brilliant condition if I'm honest. Paintwork all crazed on the bonnet and quite a lot of damage all around. You can see down this wing, for example. Yeah, quite some deep set-in rust there. 2.5 litre, 6-cylinder engine in these. Lovely car, but you know, this is getting on for a restoration project. Well, it will be soon, I think. Paintwork's very crazed. It's hard to see how these sell for that much money. It's so unfortunate that so many of these fall into this kind of state, and it's just not economically viable, or no one wants to invest in them to repair them, recommission them, restore them. And it's a shame to see what happens to these old cars, because they become virtually worthless because they're in a condition where they won't last long, the rust set in, and not many people want to invest that money in them. 1991 Peugeot 309 GTI here. These are getting really pretty popular. This is high mileage, I think it's 169,000 miles, but clearly been well cared for. The owners put on new radiator, manifold, distributor, spark plugs, skimmed head, etc. So obviously very well cared for, as I say. The paintwork isn't great. It's got some of the classic red paint issues, some chips and stuff at the front, but it's a 1991 and is 168,000 miles. So the interior actually looks in really very good condition considering that mileage. I think these seats must have been replaced because there's almost no wear on the driver's bolster. I'm not sure that would be the case at that mileage. Looks excellent. Some more minor paintwork issues down the side, and this rear suspension, I don't know whether it's dropped or been badly modified, but it's extremely low compared with the front, so maybe an issue there. Quite a large bore stainless steel exhaust. It's guided £6,000 to £8,000. These are getting popular. I think some things will put people off on this, perhaps the large bore exhaust and the low suspension at the rear, and the high mileage, of course. But still, that's not a bad price, £6,000, £7,000 for a 309 GTI. Here's a 1975 Daimler 66 VANDEN PLAS. So obviously the 5.3 litre V12, Series 2, beautiful colour. This actually has no paperwork with it. It's guided at £5,000 to £6,000, which I reckon is pretty good value for a 66. But it's obviously quite high risk with no paperwork. I like the colour. It's obviously had some work, I think, on these sills at some point. The interior also looks really pretty good. Vinyl roof also looks excellent. And, well, whilst I haven't had a thorough look around underneath in particular with these cars, you know, this could be a relatively good buy, I think. Yeah, there's some rust evident down here. The sills have had some work. So maybe one for the brave, given no paperwork, but £5,000 to £6,000 is pretty cheap. So here's quite an unusual one, which I really like. 1977 Toyota HILUX pickup, a 1600cc engine. It's a Thailand car, apparently fully restored before coming to the UK in 2022. And I really like it. Obviously modified a bit, probably different suspension as well as the wheels. And it looks in pretty good condition. It does note that their second gear is quite difficult to get into, so I'm not quite sure how bad that is. But obviously had quite a lot of time and effort spent on it. Obviously a different steering wheel, etc. Seats are awesome. Guided at £5,000 to £6,000. I think that's a great buy for something slightly unusual, quirky, and different. Another Rover I quite like the look of. This is a 1999 Sterling, so it's an 825, the 2.5 litre, 24 valve V6, and it looks in reasonably good condition. Some minor paintwork damage that you expect on a car like this. Inside looks really very good. I have a soft spot for these old Rovers actually, especially the 825s. And no reserve. Apparently the front electric windows don't work, or are faulty at least. Well, we're guessing. It's had recent new tyres, timing belt done. It's got an MOT till February 2026. And it's about 100,000 miles, or it's approaching 100,000 miles. There's a scrape down here, as you can see. I might actually bid on this. It wasn't one I was intending to bid on, but if it goes cheap, I think I'll have a go at this. Here's a car I was potentially interested in, 1991 Mercedes 190E. This is the 2 litre. And I say potentially because I had a look at the MOT history and it failed very badly after being off the road for quite some time in 2024. It then has passed and it's got a good MOT now, but a lot of the failures in that 2024 MOT were for rust on lots of different components all over the underside. And clearly it's been treated and whatever needed doing got done because it got through, but that rust won't just go away. It's probably everywhere, and just that was enough to put me off, to be honest. The paintwork's average. I can't get in here, but there's some trim coming away at doors, etc. Otherwise it looks reasonably good. It's guided at only £2,500 to £3,500, which is pretty good value for a 190E, but how many people would be put off by that? Also slightly strange that it had obviously all this recommissioning work done to get it through the MOT, but no receipts, there's no paperwork. I'd never quite understand why people spend obviously quite a lot of money getting a car sorted but don't keep any of the receipts. So legendary car here, SL55 AMG. This is 2004, so this is the R230 era of SL. 5.4 litre supercharged V8. And this one looks in reasonable condition. It's quite high mileage, about 120,000. There's some lacquer peel and stone chips on the bonnet. Otherwise it looks reasonably good. The alloys are fairly good, bodywork is straight. The main things on these that can go wrong, this era of ABC, active body control, suspension, was quite problematic. And in fact, looking at that rear, that has sunk quite a lot. If you look at the front arch and the gap there, this is really lopsided. Now that can happen when they've been sat a while. I think Mercedes actually said that if it doesn't drop within a week or so, that's within spec. Don't quote me on that. But when that starts up, I'd want to see that's rising up and levelling out. It could be there's an issue with that because that rear side is certainly not as low as the other side. It's guided at £8,000 to £9,000, which is fairly cheap for one of these SL55s. It's got an average history file, got some invoices and service records, only 2 owners. The other thing is the roof on these I'd just want to check out. So I was just wandering around here, going to feature quite a few more cars, but I've decided to leave quite a few out that I was going to include, just because there's quite a lot of not best condition ones, quite a lot of rust, trim falling off, you know, been stored for 20 years, etc. type cars. And I just didn't want to say all these negative things about the cars, so I'll leave out those ones which are really pretty poor and move on to some others. Here is another 190E, which I quite like. This is a sport line, so I think they had slightly lower suspension, didn't they, in the 2.3. This is an import, 1993, a South African car. It was a Category C insurance write-off back in 2007, so, you know, 20 years ago. I'd say that almost doesn't matter now. Some kind of cosmetic damage on the bump. It says it's had a recent respray. You know, I'm not sure if I believe that or not. The paintwork generally looks pretty good, but you know, I don't know how recent was the respray, I would ask, because there's quite a lot of damage on it. Nevertheless, it looks pretty good for the age. Inside, slightly less so, shows a bit more sign of wear. Steering wheel's quite worn, and this driver's seat has some minor tear. Trim, I see this quite a lot coming away from the windows on these cars, on the other side as well. It's not a bad car, and it's no reserve. It's got loads of history with it. It's got an MOT until May next year. I'm no longer interested. Just check the MOT history. It's got quite a lot of corrosion issues, inner sills, jacking points, and yeah, it sounds like it's fairly major from the MOT, although it did pass, so I just don't need a car like that. Over to this Scooby, which is a 2009. This is an import, so it's a SPEC C. These were a EJ20, so the 2-litre twin scroll EJ20 engine, as opposed to, I think, the 2.5 by this point in the UK models. So I would say these JDMs are quite a lot more desirable, these STIs, for that reason alone. But I think the design really split opinion, and this is guided at £14,000 to £16,000. I'm not sure it'll make that. The previous generation models tend to hold their value a bit better than these. Pretty good condition though, some wear on the driver's seat bolster, but it looks good. Yeah, for me, I like the older style inside as well as the exterior design of the older Scoobies. But a really nice condition car. So here's one of the other Jags I was interested in, 1999 X308 XJ, obviously. This is the Sport V8, so the small V8 3.2 that they did. I got put off, however, quite quickly. The alarm kept going off even though it was unlocked. And what really put me off is, unfortunately, the sills, as is so often the case, a bit of damage here, but a fairly rotten, so you can see here, you know, the rust is fairly set in. It's a no reserve car. So, you know, I'm sure that's still got some years left in it before, if you want to carry on without replacing the sills. But it's probably not for me. It's probably just a bit of a ticking time bomb, really, with that rust so set in. I haven't had a good look underneath, but I suspect if those sills are that rusty, there's quite a lot of underside rust on other components as well. So not for me. So here's a 1997 BMW 318i Touring. It's about 105,000 miles. It's no reserve though. Had a recent service. Apparently the aircon needs regassing. It's not perfect. It's a no reserve car. Actually, this arch is fairly rusty, as you can see. And there's a dent here, and the driver's seat has certainly seen better days. But if you get this for a few £100, it's probably got another 100,000 miles left in it. Auto gearbox. So here's an Audi 80, the 4th generation, so B4. I always quite like these. This is the 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol. They did V6s in these as well. And this is another no reserve car. It's only got a service history from, 20 years ago, so not much. So recent service history, but it's only 67,000 miles. Pretty good in there. Yeah, in fact, that looks really very good condition in here, considering the age. I reckon this could go for quite a few thousand, in fact. It is also a Category C insurance write-off, but it looks fairly decent. The paintwork isn't fantastic, but again, as a no reserve car, here's a car I love, if only for the sound of the V8 in this. Ferrari shared engine, I believe, 4.2 litre V8 in this one. The later one's got the 4.7, I think. This is obviously a Quattroporte 2006, and it's guided really cheaply. It's guided at £4,500 to £5,500. I think that's about as cheap as I've ever seen one of these. So a lot of car for your money. I can't get in actually, but it looks in very good condition in there. Apparently the driver's window doesn't work, but it appears to come with almost no history, which is very odd for one of these. Owned since 2019, which is a good sign in my opinion. There's some damage here, but otherwise looks pretty good. At 54,000 miles, it's also quite low mileage. I mean, I think that's an amazing price, but it's also one for the brave. These are notoriously expensive to maintain. Lots of things go wrong with them, particularly electrical issues, I believe. But if you're brave, what an engine to have for 4 or 5 grand. I love the design of these 1980s and 70s Toyota Land Cruisers. This looks awesome. Imported in 2023 to the UK. It's not actually clear to me which country this came from. Presumably South Africa or Australia, as it's right-hand drive. There's quite a lot of rust showing through, and I was surprised to see it guided at £15,000 to £20,000. I know these can fetch a lot of money, but I've also seen these fail quite badly at auction. You know, it's obviously an old car, and you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be perfect, particularly this kind of vehicle, but yeah, I struggle also with this flatbed rear. I'm not sure that's quite so desirable for many people. I think it may limit the market. Yeah, I'm no expert on these though. 4.2 litre, obviously manual gearbox. Cool, simplistic old design. Sounds like the brakes may need bleeding. There's a note saying pump the pedal. So some work probably to do on this. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if this makes more than mid-teens. So one of the other Jags I was interested in, this is an X300 1995 4 litre Sovereign. So these were still a 6-cylinder at this point before moving in the X308 to the V8s. So for me, I'd prefer even the smaller 3.2 V8. This one looks in really good condition though. It's got 14 service stamps, 69,000 miles, and I can't see any of the prevalent rust. Yeah, it's in fairly good condition. It's obviously lost its stripes down either side, that's a detail. Yeah, I quite like the look of this. For me, the downside of these is the older gearbox as well. 4-speed auto in this rather than the 5-speed, I think, wasn't it, in the X308. Older design inside as well. And so I was initially interested in the X308, the V8, but this is also no reserve. A lovely little 1966 Ford Cortina Super here. This is a New Zealand car. I think it came to the UK in the mid-80s or 90s. And it looks a really nice condition on the face of it. 1500cc engine, good paintwork, etc. Looks lovely inside. Got a lot of unoriginal dials, which may put people off. And it looks pretty good. And the engine bay as well. But unfortunately, when you start looking a little bit deeper, you know, this is some fairly major corrosion, and it's also evident slightly on the top of the wings. So yeah, a lovely looking car on the face of it, guided at I think £4,000 to £6,000, but in reality, this is a rust bucket, I'm afraid. Pretty bad rust here as well. So yeah, this will be riddled with rust, and one to avoid, I would say. A 2003 X350 XJ8. This is a V8 SE, 3.6 litre V8 in these. These have the advantage of being aluminium construction, so not so much corrosion issues. This one's average. There is some aluminium corrosion in places. and some marks on it, but it's high mileage. This is £165,000. I've had a look through the history. It's got quite a lot of work having been done to it since 2019, when the present owner has owned it since. Weirdly, although it's had loads of stuff like suspension components, etc., it doesn't seem to have listed the oil changes. I strongly suspect it has had oil changes and they've just not been recorded, or the owner's done them himself or something, because it seems strange, the work they've had done, to not have had the oil changes. It certainly shows it's, you know, well into the 150 odd thousand miles here. It's warm, but actually, you know, really good condition. Very similar to my XJ Super V8, same year. Looks good. And this, you know, these could be had for about 1,500 quid online. So it looks like the glove box isn't working perfectly. Lovely looking Triumph Herald here, 1100cc. I think it's a project though. It failed on MOT in the last couple of years and hasn't been on the road for a few years now. So would need a bit of money spending on it and recommissioning for sure. But it's no reserve. So there we go, another really interesting day at Anglia. Some very interesting cars. I think perhaps even more than ever, there's some cars you've got to be quite careful with in this day of the auction. Obviously a lot of quite rusty ones that need quite a lot of mechanical work, and just emphasises the point, you really need to check these out really thoroughly. I didn't thoroughly inspect all those cars underneath, but if I was buying them, I'd want to have a properly good look. I guess the issue is with some cars it's actually really difficult to see without getting them on ramps, even grovelling around underneath, to see the main spots where those particular cars rust. So you just have to take real care with these. Lots of no reserve cars though. I hope you enjoyed looking around these cars as well. I'll be back with more auction videos and some videos on my own cars soon. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It really does help the channel. Thanks very much for watching.